Back with the India development debate on ET now. It's the Supreme Court's biggest move ever to clean up Indian politics, and a game-changing move. The country's top court on Wednesday asked the centre to come out with a plan to weed out criminals from taking up public posts. Not just that, the Supreme Court also urged the government to consider a proposal for imposing a lifetime ban on convicted politicians from contesting elections. The centre has also been told to come out with a concrete proposal to set up special courts to hear cases involving more than 1,500 politicians with criminal records.
Now, interestingly, in an absolute U-turn from its earlier stance, the Election Commission also supported banning convicted politicians from contesting elections forever. The Supreme Court's directive to set up fast-track courts will defeat the delaying tactics of criminal politicians, even as it helps the clean politicians from being implicated in false cases. The big reform in the political space and the mega cleanup of Indian politics is the next topic of our India development debate. We've got Muhammad Khan representing the Congress Party, Ajaz Almi representing the BJP, Kanchan Gupta, commentator and columnist, and I also have the pleasure to get Professor Jagdeep S. Chokar, founder Association of Democratic Reforms, right here on ET Now. Thanks very much each one of you for being with us, and I think the topic of discussion and debate is such that tempers and passions fly high on politics. But Professor Chokar, if I may ask you, the percentage of MPs with criminal records in the present Lok Sabha that was elected in 2014, or present Parliament actually, of 2014, is 34%. It went up from 30% in 2009. The question really is the political cleanup long overdue? And shouldn't this have been actually done by the political class itself, and in the absence of which the courts are stepping in? But it's a cleanup that was long overdue.
The cleanup has been overdue for 25 years. Report after report set up by the government have said so, the Law Commission of India has said so, the Supreme Court has said so. We in the Association for Democratic Reforms have been providing data based on sworn affidavits filed by candidates to contest elections, which they have to submit under an order of the Supreme Court, to show the rise in criminality in politics. Mr. N.N. Vora, who is currently the governor of J&K, when he was Home Secretary, he had produced a report in which he said the criminalization of politics and politicization of crime is very dangerous to the country. No heed has been paid to those observations and subsequent observations. The entire political establishment of the country says they are helpless because they say people vote for the candidates with criminal cases pending against them and convicted people. We, at least I feel that political parties have to show greater courage, put up cleaner candidates. The Supreme Court even wrote in its nota judgment that if more and more people use nota, political parties will be forced to put up better candidates. It is a very sad state of affairs that political parties have to be forced to put up better candidates. They should put up better candidates on their own.
Okay.
One doesn't understand how the established leadership of political parties seems to be held to ransom by criminal elements. It's a very strange situation and a very tragic situation.
Right. Professor Chokar, you made a very valid point, and I want to just toss it to the politicians on the panel before I go to Kanchan Gupta, which is that, and Ajaz Almi, to you first, that the class has just done lip service to this issue of trying to clean up, politics from criminals. 35% of the MPs in the present parliament from the BJP face criminal cases, 22% face serious cases pending before the court, and the same is the case with the Congress. I don't think any political party can absolve itself on this particular issue, and there has been such a complete political inaction as far as this issue, a lack of intent, which is why the courts have had to step in the way they have over the last 2 months, and more specifically today. Ajaz Almi.
Well, the BJP at the center and in the court has very clearly said that this fight against decriminalization and cleaning up of the, as you say, the origin stables is something that the center totally supports. In fact, the Prime Minister spoke about it during his election campaign also. and an earlier reference was done to the Supreme Court. But we are very happy that the Supreme Court has given us 6 weeks time to come out with a list of cases, and we will support this endeavor in terms of providing the special courts that they seek, and also allocation of funds and making sure these benches come up, because we are in favor of speedy disposal of these cases. People who are against whom these charges and these cases are, they have the right to defend themselves, and if they are found to be guilty and convicted in a short span of time, that obviously will end up cleaning most political parties.
Fair point indeed, and I'm going to get down to the specifics of what the court has directed or at least suggested today in just a bit from now. But Mohammed Khan, I have the same question for you. You know, I'm not going to quote statistics here for the BJP in Parliament, but no political party on this show this evening can absolve itself of the allegation that you give tickets to criminals, criminals get elected. The fact is that you absorb them in your ilk and you cannot run away from that blame. Decriminalization of politics is a good thing. It's very good for a television debate, but it has to start from the political class. It has to start from people who are in charge of their parties, who give out those tickets.
Yes, Supriya, you're absolutely right. And I must say this, I was listening very closely to the BJP spokesperson. He is a very respected, I believe one of their few thinking men spokespersons. I would say this, sir, there is a great variance between what your party says and what it does. I agree that there is a need to clean up politics, absolutely. However, your party has continued to field tainted candidates. In fact, the maximum number of tainted candidates as per ADR's own studies.
Let's not make this political, because I'm sure Ijaz Zalmi can also throw at you the cases of all the criminal candidates that Congress has filed for the last 60 years. Why are we making it political, Mohammed?
Sandeep, if I may finish my point.
Political class and not political parties alone. It's about every political party.
The big difference between us and them is our leader came before the media. Our leader had the courage of his convictions. He came before the media, tore up the ordinance.
An ordinance that was drafted by your party's Prime Minister.
Legislators and took a stand.
And then went and made a government with Lalu Yadav in Bihar. Mohammed Khan, no, 1 second. Mohammed Khan, he tore the ordinance and then formed an alliance with Lalu Yadav in Bihar. Please don't mislead the panel here. No, he tore the ordinance and then went and made a government with Lalu Yadav in Bihar. Let's not lose sight of that fact. But Sandeep, it's you next.
While yes, we did alliance partners, but you must remember, because he tore up that ordinance is why Lalu was convicted, and after which Lalu could not contest elections. So the Congress, the RJD that the Congress allied with,
but Lalu was an election factor, and the Congress did not keep away from him despite his dirty politics.
His own defenses.
No.
And his sons and daughters contested because they were not convicted. I am telling you, if there's one party which has actually taken a stand on this, it is us. I'm not saying it is
I don't think
by any means.
Mohammed Khan, I don't think anyone is going to buy that argument. Mohammed Khan, I don't think anyone is going to buy that argument. But let me take this to Kanchan Gupta. Let me, Ijaz, let me coming to you. But I want to take this to Kanchan Gupta. Let's talk about 1 second, Ijaz. I'm coming to you. I want to take this to Kanchan Gupta and talk about the specifics of today's story, the news development today, which is the court intervening and saying that set up speedy courts to resolve the over 1,500 cases against MPs and MLAs elected to a parliament. Kanchan Gupta, is that a welcome intervention by the top court?
Yeah, it's a welcome intervention, but just a quick recap. When Prime Minister Modi, soon after he was elected to office, had made a similar suggestion that a special court should be set up, and within 2 years all cases should be heard and disposed of. If anybody is found guilty, convict him or her and then get on with life. But at that point of time, the Supreme Court had ruled out the proposition and said that no, sorry, a special court cannot be set up, and there is no reason why politicians should get preferential treatment, and the Supreme Court moved on to IPCL now and BCCI. Now, so obviously cricket in our country is of more importance than cleaning up politics. A couple of other points I would like to make since Lalu Yadav's name came up. Now, politicians would obviously cover up for their own, and if somebody is accused of a crime, it is only natural that the brotherhood would cover up for that person. But I am always mystified as to why someone like Lalu Prasad Yadav, who is a convicted criminal, it is not that cases are pending against him or he is yet to be convicted. He is a convicted criminal, and at the same time he is facing fresh trial for other cases. Yet the amount of media space he finds as a national political leader is amazing. So, I mean,
Because Mr. Gupta, he is a politically relevant figure. This is why he finds media space. Let's not malign the media in this debate. This is about dirty. This is about dirty politics. Yes.
I did not mean to offend media or malign media. But if we are going to clean out politics and if we are going to clean out the system, it's not only politicians or parliament or the judiciary which can do it. I think the media also has to play a firm role in it. That's all I'm saying.
That's a fair point, and that's a point well taken, and we should be playing a role in that. But Professor Chokar, if I may come to you, the point that Kanchan Gupta made, that Lalu Yadav is not just convicted, many cases are going on, that is so true for our political ilk. Look at the number of our elected representatives, whether it's in state legislatures or in parliament, the number of people who have a criminal record. Cases go on for years through the lifespan of people. I mean, Uma Bharti is facing a trial for almost her entire life. I mean, and I can rattle names one after the other, whether it's from the Congress or the BJP. The problem is that cases go on forever, and speedy trials, one believes, will resolve that issue, will at least, separate the wheat from the shaft in that sense. Will you agree with me?
I will agree with you, but let me say that ever since my last comment, the Supreme Court has been blamed. One party has blamed the other party has blamed the one party. The cricket has been blamed, the media has been blamed. Any time you ask political parties why do they give tickets to people with criminal cases pending against them or convicted in criminal cases, political parties can never look in the mirror and look at themselves. The whole world is to be blamed, the voters are to be blamed because they vote for these people, judiciary is slow, media is corrupted. Everybody is wrong except political parties. I want to bring this out that every political party seems to be held to ransom. As I said earlier, what the Prime Minister said in his opening address in the Rajya Sabha, that it will happen in 1 year, he did not say in 2 years. He said in at least 2 speeches in the election campaign. The Supreme Court itself had issued a decision in a PIL filed by a Public Interest Foundation in 2014 that all cases should be finished within 1 year. But the entire political system and followed by the governmental or the executive stands to block this. Supreme Court did not move on to IPCL. Supreme Court did not say we will not set up special court. Supreme Court said we already have issued an order and that needs to be complied with. Chief Secretaries and Director Generals of Police were asked by the Supreme Court and the respective High Courts. There were no responses.
Right.
Supreme Court can only say they should be done. Supreme Court cannot follow each and every case.
Okay, fair enough.
Political parties, somebody from one of the political parties said we will support the Supreme Court if it does it. Why don't the political parties pass a law in the parliament if they want to?
Okay, fair enough.
Why should they wait for the Supreme Court or a civil society organization to do this?
Okay, Professor Chokar, hold your thought. Let me get a quick word in from Ejaz Almi. I'm coming back to you in just a minute. Ejaz Almi, why do you give these people tickets? Is it just winnability that matters to political parties in this country? The fact that some of these politicians with a criminal background appear to have better winnability, and statistics stand testimony to the fact that people with criminal record clearly have better chances of winning for whatever reason. Why are tickets given to people with criminal background? Is winnability the only factor that matters when it comes to giving tickets to leaders? Ejaz Almi.
Programs and policies and leadership is what actually decides who to give a ticket to. Winnability is obviously a criteria because we have such constituency-based politics that comes about. People who have worked in the constituencies, and I must say this. I mean, despite something that it may not be agreeable, but a lot of people who are facing criminal charges, if we look at the rate of conviction per se or generally on criminality of heinous crimes. A lot of these MPs and MLAs, aspirants who get these tickets also approach the party saying that these are fictitious charges and I will not be convicted because these are trumped up charges. or political charges. So these kind of things do happen, and the fact is, I mean, nobody can defend. Every party must must ride this bandwagon and get onto a path of clean politics. There's no gainsaying that. But yes, political parties do, visibility is a criteria. I mean, it would be unfair on my part to just brush away something like this. But why is somebody having an objection if the central government is saying that we support this endeavor? In 6 months' time, in 6 weeks' time, you will have the government's going to come out very clearly, coherently and cleanly on the Supreme Court directive that we need an answer in 6 weeks' time to set up special courts for speedy disposal of these cases and for justice and in the interest of decriminalization.
Right, right. You know, in some sense, I also think this debate puts both of you in a bind, both you and Mohammad Khan. And, you know, my heart goes out to you, and I'll tell you why exactly. While winnability will obviously be a factor in giving out tickets, because there are no free lunches and political parties are out there to win these seats and make governments and have a say. The problem also perhaps rests with people, and I will address that a little later in the debate. But the point, Mohammad Khan, that I want to make is that do you believe you know, the winnability argument kept aside, the speedy trial will help you select the right candidates, because right now you're in a bind. A person who has a winnability record is also a goon. You have to give him the ticket. If he's weeded out, it automatically opens the door to cleaner people who would want to be a part of politics. Is it not advantage politicians and political parties then?
Correct. Absolutely. Absolutely. I will make two very quick points. First is, and this is a general point, and I'm sure your research will support this, it is the nature of our politics, and you have to take this into consideration, that when a person rises as a political neta, you have to admit that there are instances in the past when cases are leveled against them by political rivals and opponents, which may or may not result in a conviction. Now, this is of course, if heinous charges are leveled against them, then of course they should not be taken lightly. To this end, I'll tell you what we do internally in the Congress from my first-hand experience. Whenever we are looking at candidates who have cases leveled against them or charges leveled against them, we ask them to prepare a detailed note of their defense to explain to us why is it that these charges are not true, to provide evidence. We have an internal scrutiny mechanism when we give tickets to people like this, because as I said at the very outset, we are the only party that has had the courage of our convictions and said convicted people should not contest. Of course, we can't impose that on other parties, but tearing up the ordinance was the first step. Secondly, we will support any measure taken by this government or otherwise to bring more transparency into candidate background checks. For example, bring an RTI into political affairs. This is something that Rahulji has addressed earlier. We have always asked you, if you talk about transparency, appoint the Lokpal. That's what the Lokpal was for, if you recall correctly. People holding high offices would be investigated in a fast-track fashion. But as I said, what the BJP says and what the BJP does are at variance. Because for the last 3.5 years, and I'll conclude on this point, for the last 3.5 years, Supriya, you will note that these people have failed to appoint the Lokpal for the specious and weak reason that there is no leader of opposition. It would have taken you a month to amend that requirement, and you could have appointed a Lokpal. I don't know what prevented you from doing this. Okay, the Lokpal debate set aside, because I think that in itself merits a 1-hour debate. But Professor Chokar, because I know we're constrained on time here, and I also appreciate the point that you make, Mohammad Khan, that in this age of politics of vendetta and vicious charges that come from either sides, you know, fictitious cases do get fabricated, and fictitious cases are thrown and leveled at politicians. So my sympathies does lie with the political class on account of just that one point. But Professor Chokar, I also want to ask you this whole concept of political clientelism. I mean, winnability is one thing, political clientelism is the other. These bahubalis, as they are called, you know, the gunda elements as we call them, they are seen as bahubalis in their own constituencies. You know, wo damdar log hai, wo kaam karke dikha sakte hai. So in some sense, that also plays along. It's the political clientelism that is also responsible for electing people like that with criminal records. Will you agree with us, Professor Chokar?
No, I will not. But before I respond to that, let me comment on 2 points that the speaker just before me said. Number one, he said that we have to take into account the nature of politics in the country, and it is in the nature of politics that false cases are foisted on politicians by other politicians. Now, this is a very important point to note here. It is politicians who do this to other politicians. Citizens don't do this. Police does not do this. No policeman has a courage to foist a false case against a politician who has aspirations of contesting elections unless it is asked for by another politician. Politicians create this problem and they say the society to solve this problem without any discomfort to us. Why should politicians foist false cases on each other? Can they not come to that agreement? They can come to an agreement, and which is my next point, that RTI should not apply to political parties. The speaker before me said, why doesn't the government put political parties under RTI? There are 6 national political parties, and the speaker before me was, I believe, from the Congress, BJP, NCP, BSP, CPI, CPM. The Central Information has said 3 years ago that they are public authorities under the RTI. They have refused to comply with that order, and in the Supreme Court, the government of the day has said political parties should not be under RTI. Now, on the one hand, we have these actions, and on the television, these gentlemen come and make these pious statements. Who does one believe? And this is political clientelism, is because political parties want to take the easy way out.
Okay.
They do not do what is called real political work in constituencies.
Okay.
Bahubalis get work done because they intimidate officials.
Right.
The law and order machinery does not act against them because the government of the state protects these elements. And the governance at the ultimate is controlled by politicians.
Okay, this is because as a governance
politicians, as I have said twice, they seem to be held to a ransom by criminal elements.
Okay.
They don't seem to have the courage to stand up and be counted.
Okay, okay. You've made a point. Let me take it to Kanchan Gupta. The other, observation made by the Supreme Court and the other area of contention is, of course, this controversial move of banning politicians, doing away with that 6-year period when you're not allowed to contest elections and having the same rule that applies for the executive in many ways. So, Kanchan Gupta, your view on that, is that something that's contentious because, we spoke about some of these false cases that could get thrown up and all. Do you think it's feasible, or do you think that's the right move that we need to do in order to clean up the political system? Kanchan Gupta.
Yeah, I just need a couple of minutes to explain, because a lot of stuff has been said over here, which is just by nature of, broad brushing everybody with the same taint. Now, just because there is a case against you, or just because somebody has filed a complaint against you, does not automatically make you a criminal. Now, we still live in a country where the law is supreme, and the law says that you are innocent unless proven guilty. So, to continuously refer to politicians as criminals, I think is utter cynicism, and this is what has made the political class irrelevant in certain countries. I do not wish to name them, and it's a dangerous path to take, and I don't think we should go that way. Number 2, it was just now suggested that politicians file cases against politicians. That may be true, but it is equally true, and in fact, if you go through all the cases that are shown as pending against politicians who are elected to office, you will find that the maximum number of cases have been filed by the police, by the district administration, or by the local officials. You lead a demonstration, you lead an agitation, and you are accused of various crimes, ranging from obstructing a public official from performing his duty, which is punishable with a 2 years jail sentence. You are charged with molesting women because there were women officers, police officers or constables on duty, and it goes on and on and on. So somewhere this absurdity has to stop. Now, in our system, once a case is filed, it cannot be withdrawn. I mean, at least it cannot be withdrawn just like that. You have to make court appearances, that the hearing will continue, and then you have lower court judges who will demand to know, why are you withdrawing the case? And I come back again, and I really don't mean any ill will to the media, but if a case is withdrawn, then the media will be the first to jump down and say, oh, this politician has been absolved of criminality. Now, we also need to look at the reality around us. you expect political parties to take a call and take a stand. Yes, they should, but that is in the in an ideal world. Till such time the world becomes ideal, you have to operate within the world that exists, and there are certain acts of omission rather than acts of commission which are committed. Yes, politicians with a suspect antecedents get tickets, they get elected, and they hold office, and that is unfortunate, but that is again a reality. And a last point that I would like to make: for heaven's sake, let us not start treating the entire political class, start treating all political parties, whether it is the BJP or the Congress or the CPM or the ADMK or the National Conference, PDP, whatever, to constantly refer to them as a gang of criminals, repeating this word again and again in the public space. You are warping public perception of politics. Politics is the mainstay of any democracy, and you are warping the public perception of politicians as well as political parties. That I don't think is going to help you end criminality in any manner.
I think I absolutely agree with your last point. We cannot paint politicians with this broad brush that everybody who's in politics is a goon, is a criminal. That's farthest from the truth. And I think that's also dangerous for a democracy like that, which is perhaps why you don't see too many educated professionals getting into politics. Of course, that's slowly and surely changing. But, Ejaz Almi and Mohammed Khan, I have a question for you. And, when we talk about a life ban, I'm sure political parties will have a view on this. But don't you believe a life ban for anybody who's convicted also acts as a deterrent, will perhaps make anybody with a tainted background but who has political aspirations be watchful of their behavior? So that will act as a deterrent, won't it not? Ejaz Almi, let's begin with you.
Yeah, it's very clear that presently under the Representations of the People's Act, if you are convicted and you have a 6-year limit, a 6-year bar from contesting elections. But something like this, the government is willing to consider this aspect also, and it needs to be well discussed and debated and talked about within all the political parties. We must come to some sort of convergence on this, because a lot of parties are opposed to something like this. They say that nobody who has been disqualified has ever got back into parliament or as an MLA, and 6 years suffices. So I mean, the central government is open to discussion on these matters, and we can actively consider this extension to make it from a 6-year term to a life ban.
Comment on that, Mohammed Khan. Ejaz Almi is making a, some may read it as a diplomatically correct thing to say. Some may say he's making a bold statement of intent when it comes to cleaning up politics, saying that the BJP and this government is willing to have a dialogue with all political parties on this particular issue that the court has now, and the Election Commission, mind you, has done a bit of a U-turn, has now made it very clear that it is in favor of banning politicians for life if they are convicted. What is the view of the Congress party, Mohammed Khan?
Yes. Well, I don't know if Mr. Almi's party supports the stand he is taking here today. There is nothing in the last 3 years and 6 months to suggest that they do. I want to make one very quick point. The gentleman who spoke with a certain degree of cynicism about political parties and said we come here and take these stands. Well, I, on behalf of the Congress, take these stands because they are backed by our experience. We have done more than our share. If you will recall, we have removed 4 leaders while we were in office when the slightest charges were leveled against them. These were not mid-level leaders, these were senior leaders. We brought into place the very RTI that today gives rise to evidence and charges which are then proved in court. And thirdly, when faced with a national agitation, we could have brushed it aside like the BJP does with the agitations. We took that on board and drafted and passed the Lokpal Act. These are not small considerations for a 5-year tenure of UPA2 or a 10-year tenure if you look at it from 2004 to 14. I want to also say this, I don't know how much success you will have with the life ban. Interestingly, though not entirely correct to compare, South Korea has a single term for its presidents. And ironically, that seemed to have increased corruption with a large number of their presidents having been hauled up. Now, if you advocate a life ban, how much of a deterrent it will be, I don't know. There is no data or evidence to support that. These are, of course, politicians are by nature ambitious and risk takers. I don't think they'll be deterred very much by that. However, there needs to be a faster investigation process. And there are some allegations that are made that greatly destroy the reputations of politicians. Even if they are cleared several years later, the nature of these charges continues to haunt them because they've been tried in the media and by the general public. So I think we need a faster trial process. I think that is the takeaway from today's debate.
We definitely need a faster trial process because it also gets us going with a better breed of politicians. But you know, as we close this debate, Professor Chokar, let me begin this round with you. You know, we are in the habit of bashing politicians, perhaps for the right reason. They have a mandate, we elect them, they don't deliver, we must bash them. But we should also laud them once in a while. All of that set aside, I also think one of the things that doesn't get often spoken about it is the Indian voter. Is the Indian voter a lot less intolerant of corruption or of moral issues than he perhaps ought to be? Because all of these people that we are, we are raising our voice against are people who are getting elected by a democratic process. There are people queuing up, lining up and voting them in. So the blame has to also be shouldered by the Indian voter.
It is very easy to blame the Indian voter because the Indian voters are not organized, they are not a monolith. Indian voters, if I tell you a little detail, we do an analysis called a red alert constituency analysis. And constituencies which have 3 or more candidates with pending criminal cases against them are called red alert constituencies. Even if there are 15 candidates in an election, serious candidates with a reasonable chance of winning are only 2 or 3. If all those 3 have criminal cases pending against them, what choice, I ask, does the Indian voter have? Either he or she can vote for a candidate whom he or she is absolutely sure is going to lose, or now they can vote nota, or they have to vote for one of the 2 or 3 people who is from the major political parties, and more than 50% of the constituencies in the country at any given point in any given election are red alert constituencies. The Indian voter does not stand a chance, and it is, yes, it is wrong to blame politics, and politics is the mainstay of democracy in any country, but good politics is the mainstay of democracy, not bad politics. The number of people with criminal cases pending against them in the Lok Sabha has risen from 125 in 2004 to 162 in 2009 and to 196 in 2014. Now, how can you say that the political class is doing the right thing? And criminal cases that are, the Supreme Court said candidates have to disclose in their affidavit, are not a complaint brought by X, Y and Z.
Fair enough.
These are cases where just a minute,
Sure, please complete your point. Okay.
Can I complete this? Can I complete this?
Sure, complete your point.
These are cases where the Supreme Court has said there should be minimum punishment of 2 years and charges must have been framed by a court of law. These are serious cases. These are not frivolous cases.
Okay, point noted.
So, political parties have to take responsibility. Trying to hide behind delay in the judicial process, the Indian voter being tolerant of politics, the reality is bad, I agree. But do we continue to perpetuate that reality and make it worse, or do we work to make this marginally better? Is that the role of political parties? Like I don't want to say anything against the film industry, but Bombay film industry sometimes back used to say, we make films that people want to see. Political parties seem to say, we give voters candidates that they want to have, that they vote for.
Okay, fair enough.
Political parties have some sense of responsibility rather than being helpless spectators.
Okay,
and I am saying it for the 5th time, they seem to be held by ransom by the criminal elements.
Okay, Professor Chokar, I don't think anyone in this panel, Professor Chokar, I don't think, I'll have to interrupt you, we are completely running out of time. I don't think anyone in the panel, Professor Chawker, I don't think anyone in the panel disagrees with you on the fact that the political class needs to take much of the blame. I think the question that Supriya asked was, does some blame also rest with the Indian voter who elects some of these politicians? I'm going to let Kanchan Gupta have the last word. Do you agree with Professor Chawker? Do you agree with Professor Chawker that it's only the political class that needs to fix this problem and the voter should not be blamed? And more importantly, who's going to bite the bullet? Is it going to be the political class? Do you expect the government to act on this? Is it going to be the Supreme Court, or should we just be the voters who should reject politicians with a criminal record? What's the way out of this? Kanchan Gupta, last word.
No, I began with this. I mean, this is something which the political class alone cannot do it, and it would be absurd to just sort of expect the politicians to stand up and say, okay, from tomorrow we become clean and no more tainted colleagues anymore. That won't happen. So there has to be a matching response by the electorate. The voters have to start rejecting candidates who are genuinely criminal or who are generally perceived to be criminals. That has to happen. The media has to take a much tougher line than it does, because it continues to make exceptions in certain cases, and often this is said as a defense that so-and-so is politically relevant, that's why so-and-so gets media coverage. Sorry, if that person is a convicted criminal, he should be blacked out. Number 3, now as far as I think this point about banning a politician for life is a damn good point. But banning from contesting elections and holding office is one thing, but the person should also be prohibited from holding any office within a political party. So you cannot have from campaigning in elections. So if you are convicted of a criminal charge and you are you should not only be able not to contest elections for the rest of your life, you should be also prohibited from holding any office in a political party, and you shall not have the opportunity to campaign in an election for any individual or for any political party. So it has to be a comprehensive ban. It cannot just be a partial ban. Otherwise, it makes no sense. And the last point which I would like to make is that we can keep on saying that there are so many elected politicians with so many hundreds of cases, and we can keep on calling those cases criminal cases. Yes, as per the Supreme Court's guidelines, I mean, any charge which involves imprisonment of 2 years or more is to be considered as a criminal charge. But as I just gave an example, that if I were to participate in a agitation tomorrow and the police were to file a case against me, they could always accuse me or charge me with prohibiting a public officer from conducting his duty. And that involves, and if I am held guilty, that involves a punishable offense of 2 years in jail. Now, is that a criminal offense? In the sense that should that disqualify a politician from holding office or from contesting elections? So it is not a black and white thing. There are shades of gray in between, and there has to be a nuanced discussion. There has to be a nuanced public debate, and any decision that follows either by the courts or by parliament or by the political parties has to factor in these nuanced distinctions between the one set of cases and another set of cases.
Right. Well, on that balanced note, thank you very much, Professor Chawker, Mr. Kanchan Gupta, Ilaz Elmi, and of course Muhammad Khan for joining us on this very spirited debate. Politics is really the mainstay of any democracy, but it must never be the last resort of the scoundrels. And any process to clean up politics is certainly always welcome.
The responsibility rests with the courts, the government, political parties themselves, and also the Indian voter. Only then will Indian democracy thrive and attract top talent and deliver good governance. Thanks for being with us in this special edition of the India Development Debate.